As George Orwell once noted, the worst advertisement for socialism is its adherents. According to Orwell, the typical socialist is, quote, either a youthful snob Bolshevik or, more typically, a prim little man with a white-collar job, usually a secret teetotaler, and often with vegetarian leanings. Orwell wrote those words in 1937, but they're weirdly recognizable today, especially the line about vegetarianism. There's something about the left, you may have noticed, that makes them highly neurotic about food. It's been that way for generations. But there's ample evidence the impulse is getting worse. Here's a clip from the other night on CNN. Democratic candidates lining up to denounce meat as immoral.
But would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
You know, the food pyramid. What people
yes.
To reduce red meat specifically.
Yes, I would.
It's good for the environment. It's good for your health if you eat less meat. Certainly, meat is an extraordinarily expensive thing to produce.
Look, there are a lot of ways that we try to change our energy consumption. Some of it is with light bulbs, some of it is on straws, some of it, dang, is on cheeseburgers, right?
Catch that? Elizabeth Warren says you eat too many cheeseburgers, as if it's any of her business. But that's the thing. She actually thinks it is her business. They all think that. The activist left seeks to control everything you do, including what you put in your mouth. For the last few years, they've been pushing you to eat bugs. Bugs. Remember the headline from the Washington Post? Eating bugs can help the environment. Or how about this one from the New York Times? Why aren't we eating more insects? It's bizarre. Why would they want you to eat insects? Well, because eating insects is repulsive and un-American. And of course, therefore, in the eyes of the left, it must be awesome. The more perverse and unnatural, the better. That has always been their standard. They're not leading a political movement, by the way. They're leading a revolt against their fathers. But given that, we shouldn't be surprised by what happened on Swedish television this week, when a researcher called Magnus Soderlund unveiled his plan to fight climate change. According to Soderlund, eating insects is not enough. Cutting greenhouse gas emissions may require us to develop a taste for human flesh. Yes, it's time to practice eco-cannibalism. Watch.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Sorry, wrong clip. But you get the point. Professor Soderlund went on to say that, unfortunately, many people might balk at cannibalism. They're just too uptight and middle class to eat human flesh. So he suggested baby steps to open their minds to it. Start by eating their own pets. Have a Cocker Spaniel burger for the planet. Now, the Swedes, we should tell you, are several years ahead of us here in the U.S. in their climate consciousness, but we'll get there soon. And when we do get there, it will be due to the tireless evangelizing of eco-prophets like St. Pete Buttigieg of South Bend. As Buttigieg noted the other night, God himself strongly agrees with every word that St. Pete utters.
You know, if you believe that God is watching as poison is being belched into the air of creation, and people are being harmed by it, countries are at risk of vanishing in low-lying areas, what do you suppose God thinks of that? I bet he thinks it's messed up. At least one way of talking about this is that it's a kind of sin.
Hear that? Disagreeing with St. Pete is a sin. Or as Episcopalians like St. Pete put it, a kind of sin. Whatever, it's bad. What apparently is not a sin is flying on private jets, which St. Pete does more than any other Democratic candidate in the race. Of course, if you did it, if you wound up within 50 feet of a chartered jet, the left would denounce you as a heartless plutocrat who's murdering the planet. But when they fly private, it's very different, very different. It's necessary. It's not frivolous. They have to. It's virtuous, actually. So there are two standards, one for them, one for everyone else. They're like that at everything, by the way. Watch, for example, as St. Pete needles the rest of us proles about our naughty plastic straw habit.
I think we're thinking about it mostly through the perspective of guilt, you know, from using a straw to eating a burger. Am I part of the problem? And in a certain way, yes, but the most exciting thing is that we can all be part of the solution.
You just heard it. When you use a drinking straw, says St. Pete of South Bend, you're part of the problem. Unless you happen to be Pete Buttigieg himself, and you find yourself at the Iowa State Fair in which case you can eat all the meat you want, and yes, you can drink from a plastic straw. Watch.
And there's no long-term plan.
Did the USMCA help farmers? Voters one-on-one. Do they want to know about policy, or do they want to... And how do you pitch something like a plan for... How do you demonstrate to people here that you could be the guy?
You starting to figure this out? Straws for me, but not for thee. Don't like it? Tough. Stop your whining and eat your insects, or your pets, or your neighbors. We're heading out for a cheeseburger.